Hey friends, it's Tim at Sequel with my buddies Bill and Josh, and we are continuing the conversation about what it looks like to chase after Jesus and live in rhythm as we seek well together. Bill, Josh, how you doing today?
Great.
Good. Josh, what's in the mug?
Inside of my new favorite Created Co mug that I got for Christmas from my wife is, believe it or not, I know we talked about how snobby we are with our coffee, which is totally justifiable, but this is Trader Joe's, and it is the Colombian Supremo. Comes in like the tall can, which is deceiving, but it's really good. This is the best Trader Joe's coffee. Nice
Cheers
mug.
to that. Little
What do you
point
got?
there. That's right. Bill, you got something different in your mug. What do you got going on there?
Got a little mason jar here with some dirt and some water, and I'm kind of swirling it up a little bit to make what looks like a vegan shake, but you wouldn't want to drink this right
And you're
now.
not going to drink that, right?
No, that would be.
Okay.
I have some Kenyan from a local company in my Starbucks mug from California where I want to be today.
Nice. So Bill,
Nice.
hold up that mason jar again. So I know some of you are like, what is the deal with the mason jar? That looks gnarly in there. So we're going to get to that. So hang with us. The topic for today is this idea of settling, getting away, or just taking time in your day to settle down as you begin the process of listening to Jesus. If you're following along with our daily rhythm, you'll know it's right in kind of the primer, if you will, as you kind of start your time with Jesus. Silence is uncomfortable. Let's be honest. If you're standing in line at the grocery store, or if you're just kind of hanging out and you've got the uncomfortable 45 seconds of like, I have nothing to do. What do we all do? We reach for the phone, right? We are inundated with noise right now. And this idea of silence, it is strangely uncomfortable for us in this kind of moment in our culture. When I think about silence and solitude, one of my favorite passages in scripture comes out of Mark 6. Jesus sent the disciples off to do ministry 2 by 2, and they come back and they have this amazing experience. And it says that, they would lay their hands on people and they were healed and anointed and so forth. And then Jesus says, hey, let's go rest. And they get in the boat and they go to the other side of the lake. And unfortunately, because Jesus was a thing now, people were following him, and they took off and they figured out where he was going. And then this epic story of he feeds the 5,000. But what does Jesus do after that? He didn't forget about the rest. He says to the disciples, you get in the boat, you go to the other side, I'll take care of these people. He sends them off. And then it says he goes up into a mountain to pray or to rest, right?
Yeah.
That's why we chase Jesus in the mountains, right?
One of many reasons.
But one of many reasons, that's right. So Jesus modeled this after us. And Matthew actually records something really interesting that I wanted to read as we kick off our discussion today. We hear a lot about the Lord's Prayer. This is how Jesus taught us to pray. But listen to the Message version here. And this is verse 5 and 6 of Matthew chapter 6. And when you come to God, don't turn that into a theatrical production either. All these people making a regular show of their prayers, hoping for stardom. Do you think God sits in a box seat? So we've heard that before, but here's the part. Here's what I want you to do. Find a quiet, secluded place so that you won't be tempted to role play before God. Just be as simply and honestly as you can manage. The focus will shift from you to God, and you will begin to sense his grace. The part I love of that, just be there simply and honestly as you can. So I thought we would start with that. Jesus modeled that for us, guys. We know that.
Yeah.
So Josh, why is settling so hard? Why is silence so hard?
I think you hit the nail on the head right before that when you said, anytime that we feel like that we're just like still or something, we're reaching for some form of like external stimulus. It's like, where's my phone? If I don't have my phone, where's a screen? Or I don't know, think about your commute to work or whatever. Like, you got the radio on. So you have sports
100%.
radio, talk radio, whatever. You got a podcast. You're at the gym actually doing something, but you have a podcast on for another. Think of all the stimulus that are coming in. I just think like we're completely surrounded by it. And so that has become the new cultural norm. We're not saying it's necessarily bad.
Yeah.
It just feels foreign, right?
Yeah. So when you get to silence and stillness, it's like, what is this feeling? What is this? This isn't right. It seems like it's not right. You should be doing something else. So, getting into that stillness and silence seems, like you said, so foreign. Like, why would you?
So Bill, you coach a lot of people in your professional world. What's the consequence of not learning to be still?
Well, I think, Josh, I just want to add to what you said. The word I heard somebody say one time is emotional white noise, is that we don't stop, because when we stop, and this gets to your question, Tim, when we stop, we actually have to deal with what's going on in our heart and in our mind, in our circumstance around us. And so what we do is we put, like, I have a white noise machine outside my door because it's snowing today and my kids are listening to Christmas music. So it kind of it tunes out the Grinch playing right now.
Totally, yeah.
but in our lives, what we do is we put this white noise on all the time to tune out the feelings and emotions that are underneath. And when we don't access them, number one, we're not being our true selves, which at Sequel, I mean, we want you to be that best version that God's created you to be. But the second thing is we then learn to avoid it, because when we go to that place, when we take that backpack off of emotion or hurt or frustration or sadness or even joy, we don't know what to do with it. We don't know. Yeah. We don't have the margin to actually engage with those emotions. And we live a life that we were never designed to live.
So so would you say, Bill, that we just become numb?
Yeah, you just numb out to it, and then you go to your emotional white noise of choice. So you go to your Netflix, you go to Amazon, Amazon Prime, you go to a book, you go to a glass of wine, you go to things that could be designed to be really healthy in our lives. They become coping mechanisms, and they become crutches, and they become things to numb out to. And then we sit there, and we've all had this moment, right, where we sit there and go, what am I doing right now? Who am I?
Yeah.
Because there's a feeling underneath that's trying to pop out. And then we're like, oh, Netflix is going to let me go to the next one. Click.
Yeah. Yep.
And it goes back down.
Yeah. And the three of us, we've experienced this in our life. And so it's easier to recognize it in other people's lives because we've been through that. But I know personally for years, I would numb myself to achievement or to money or success or the latest thing. I mean, I think if you went back and asked people about me for the last 15 years, one of the things they would say about me is he's always got a new thing. He always gets obsessed with
How's that mountain bike?
Right.
Sir.
Spot on, right? Now it's bread. Hey, just FYI, but tastes good. So,
that's good.
So if you're not careful, it can numb you to what's really, going on. We've experienced that. And so it's a little easier to see that in other people. And we didn't learn that on our own. Somebody taught that to us, right? And then Jesus got a hold of us. And I love what he says in that verse. We talked last week about the difference between a quiet time and just being with Jesus. That's why settling is so important.
Yeah.
To just simply be. And then the part I love is, and I love, and as honestly as you can manage, let's be honest, like not perfect. The focus will shift from you to God, and you will begin to sense his grace.
Right? Such a scary place though, right? Like, because in the moment when the focus is on me, when everything's quiet and I'm settling, it's almost that thought of, well, what do I do now? Instead of going straight to God in that moment or holding space with him in that place. So there's that moment of like uncomfortability where you're like, what's going to happen next? And then Jesus comes in. And like you said, there's grace.
Vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think sometimes people don't ask Jesus what he thinks because they don't want to know. Right. Like if I asked him about my marriage, he'll say what I already know, or that's scary, that's vulnerable. So Josh, we've all had experience with this in our life. So tell me, like, how has silence and solitude, and particularly just the idea of settling daily, like how has this made a difference in your life?
It has showed me that the settling and silence part, but specifically the settling part, really it takes practice. Like it's not a switch you flip. I think the first time you do it, it's a switch you flip. It's like, I'm going to be silent. I'm going to be still. And you're like actively still. Does that make sense? You're like, I'm
Yeah.
focusing on just being still. Um, and the first time was probably my first refresh when you're like, hey, nope, no phones, no technology. Literally go walk, in the
And the
woods
anxiety
and
starts to
find a
build.
spot. Yes.
Like,
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting. I mean, it's totally God and bringing this up. But this morning, like I actually struggled with it. I
Mhm.
did what I always do, talked about that last week. But when I found myself like in the stillness, I found myself thinking about the stillness and then almost thinking and wanting to do the next thing. So I had to
Sure.
close my journal, flip over my phone that I was using for scripture, and literally just like put my head in my hands in a prayer posture and
Yeah.
just I did the part of the prayer that wasn't necessarily the me talking. It was just like
Hmm.
in my soul, Jesus, I'm here and I'm struggling with this right now. So you need to show me and clear all the noises and
Clear the
distractions.
air. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but building that discipline and that rhythm of trying to do that, like brings success down the road where it's a lot easier to enter into. But it's a discipline. You have to work at it.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we got to pay attention to what's happening in our body.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's
for
good.
for anybody who struggles with anxiety or nervousness or like whatever, silence and the idea of settling can be a little bit more difficult for that person
Right.
because there is a physical reaction happening, and we have to pay attention. I mean, I had a moment a couple of weeks ago that something was happening like in my legs, and
Hmm.
I couldn't put my finger on it, and I realized I was really anxious. It was like a tingling, right? So think
Wow.
about trying to settle when you have that
Yeah.
constant thing happening. I wasn't sleeping well, so forth.
Mm.
But that's why this daily rhythm is so important. It's why the idea of just taking a few breaths before you meet with Jesus, before you spend time with him, is a
Yeah.
huge deal. Bill, you said, one of you guys said last week you used the Pause app John Eldridge put
yeah,
out, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
yeah,
You've used a number of things over the years that help you with the settling process. What's
yeah.
kind of your go-to?
Honestly, man, but before I even get into it, the thing I have to remind myself, 5, 6 years into this journey, is it always takes longer than I expect. Like for me, when there are mornings when I try to wake up and just come, and this is like my quiet time space, and I'll sit and then want to just go straight to scripture and journaling because I want to go work out or I want to go do something else. And almost every time it's Jesus going, hey, you can't, this isn't a 3-minute exercise. Like
Mm,
this is a posture of the heart to experience me in
Yeah.
different ways.
Yep.
So for me, things that I do, man, honestly, I use the Pause app, which is great. The other thing I'll do is kind of like you, Josh. I'll put a timer on my phone, but then I'll flip my phone over so I know it's on. I know it's working. Sometimes I'll put some instrumental music on. I'll just clear, like clutter is a thing for me. I have to get the clutter off my desk
Mm.
so I can sit and just close my eyes and sit in a comfortable position. Um, but I think for me personally, it's realizing it's going to take longer, no matter what the tool is, whether it's having a piece of paper next to me to write my task list for the day when it comes into my head, whether it's a phone, whether it's the Pause app, whether
Yeah.
it's an instrumental worship song that I know how long it is.
yeah.
It's just going, this is going to take more
Yeah.
than I expect in a
So,
positive way.
so for sure. Yeah. And that's been my experience as well. That's why, I typically spend an hour in the morning from 6 to 7 or sometimes even longer. And every now and again, I'll get this craving where I'm like, I need to get up at 5 and spend a prolonged period of time.
Yeah.
And there have been several instances where it's where I'm going to spend 2 or 3 hours just being with Jesus and no agenda. A lot of times I'll go into that just saying, hey, just do whatever you want to do. But I just need to just sort of clear the table, clear the air with Jesus and just let him do what he wants to do. But what's interesting is as we kind of go down the journey of Sequel and we've invited others into this, one of the things I have heard from other people is I can't do that. Now, you guys know me. what's the one word in the English dictionary I hate more than anything else?
That one.
Chance. Because it's total BS.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Yeah.
Josh, you cannot dunk a basketball to my knowledge. And Bill, you cannot throw a baseball 90 anymore, right?
Challenge accepted.
Okay, yeah.
No, not for me.
But most things you can do.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So there's a physical limitation in some regard.
Right.
You can be still. It's you. Let's just be honest about it and say you won't.
Yeah. Or not willing to.
Yeah. So what would you, as we kind of wrap this up, what would you say to the person who says, I can't be still?
I would say to try a different method. I think sometimes in church or sometimes in life, we're told certain ways to do things. Like in church, you're told your quiet time is where you sit and you read 3 chapters of the Bible and you listen to 2 worship songs and sit and not do anything for 5 minutes. Like that's not quiet time, right? Sometimes for me, some of my most meaningful settling times have been on a walk around the block with my dog with no technology because I need to move. Or Tim, we've been texting back and forth. There's been times I'm on a run where I put my headphones away, and that's a settling time for me because I'm active, but I'm receiving. And so I think just trying to get outside the box and figuring out what works with your wiring and personality and with the way that God made you.
Yeah. How about you, Josh?
Yeah. One of the things, I'm so glad you asked that because it was jogging my memory. I've only had to do this a few times, but one of the things we've even led, our guys through Refresh and women through Encourage on is like, as you go in, a lot of us have to take that 1 page of paper and do the brain dump, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's just a super practical thing for anybody who's watching this, because I know the 3 of us do it often. And it applies even outside of the topic we're talking about, right? But the idea of like, okay, empty your brain of all the things that you need to do today or the things that you're thinking about that need your attention or whatever. And by doing that, you're putting them in a place that you can calm down and go back for as your to-do list or whatever. But that's been so freeing because it's not taking the responsibility away, but it's like clearing up that RAM, in my CPU kind of thing, which then starts to bring everything down. It's like, okay, boom, that's the back of my journal. I'm not looking at it. I'm good. Right. So that's been super helpful too. In the times when I really struggle to be still.
Right. Totally. So here's what I would say. Bill, hold up that other mason jar. All right, folks, you see this? So when we're not able to be still, our life looks like the one that Bill's holding up.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're able to settle, it looks like the one I'm holding up. You can see right through it. And that's why we shake up the mason jar, is because it's this really simple, practical application of when we're not able to settle and be still, it's really difficult to see clearly.
Yeah.
But when we settle down and are able to just calm ourselves and allow Jesus to speak into that, all of a sudden the waters get a little bit more clear. And I would go so far as to say, if you want to live your best life, and I know that's a very cliche, like Christianese thing to say, but Jesus says, I want you to live life to the full. If you want to live your best life, you got to learn to settle. You got to learn to just sit in the uncomfortable silence. And I can't think of a better illustration than this right here. And so I just think it's quite literally the simple question of, if you want to live like Bill's jar, or you want to live like this jar. And I think that's the challenge. It's a challenge for all of us. So that's settling. Next week, we are going to dive into what it looks like to pray in a listening posture. Sometimes we call that a listening prayer. But for this week, as you engage with us in this daily rhythm, we would encourage you, just focus on learning to be still, practicing the art of settling. No agenda, no preconditions with Jesus. Just be still, listen to his voice. We can't wait to see you next week.